Hello, everyone. I am here today to talk about my final oral reflection. And my name is Ryan Haxton, and this is for my Leadership 802 Organizational Systems, Change, and Leadership class for the HESA program. So, a little bit, kind of the overview of my reflection, what I'll be talking about. First is the preconceived, kind of those ideas I had before coming to this class, starting the course. So, my class expectations. After that, I'll talk a little bit about the application of some of those course materials that I found really important, very vital for me, and that really applied to what I want to do in that kind of new learning. Next, I'll talk about some demonstrating and kind of acquiring some of those NASPA leadership competency, the areas within the NASPA leadership competency. And then I'm going to move on to my personal growth reflection and just kind of talk about myself personally and how I see that this course has affected me. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about the future application of those course materials and kind of where I can see in my future professional life how I can apply some of the stuff that I've learned in this class. So a little bit about the class expectations that I had. So before I started this course and when I was in my undergraduate, I was at K-State in Manhattan, and I got my minor in leadership studies. And so I've definitely had that understanding and kind of that foundation of leadership studies. So part of me wanted to kind of take those theories and apply them at an advanced level like that we did, and just being able to understand, especially in higher education student affairs, what those leadership theories look like and how they're applicable. Also, some of my expectations were a little bit about history and understanding the history of leadership development, maybe even just leadership studies, but also leadership development and student affairs specifically. And then also organizational charts. So with organization in the title, I figured we'd talk about organizational charts and have an understanding of how those matter and what that means for a university and a department. Finally, importance of diversity in leadership roles, especially in higher education. I think that's important, and kind of having that understanding of why diversity matters and why that matters, not just to say that you have individuals from diverse backgrounds and special populations, whatever that might be, that you have them in leadership roles and what that looks like and how that positively affects your campus. And then finally, just having those deep, meaningful kind of class conversations regarding leadership studies and those leadership theories that we did, and just kind of the material that we learned, and just having those dialogues that I think are really important. So a little bit about the application of the vital course materials. So some of this is just new, as you said, new learnings and what really worked well for me on a personal level. So first up, I think the biggest impact for me was the four-frame model of leadership theory. So I used the Kelly Center for my OAP, my organizational assessment paper, but I think just being a part of this organization for almost a year now, and being able to use the four-frame model to look at, whether it's the structural frame or political frame, and just kind of having an understanding of what that means and the things that I've already been seeing, and then I can now kind of apply and go, okay, let's reframe this. This is what this looks like for the Kelly Center, and I think it's going to be important for me to use in future roles too, but especially for the Kelly Center now, where I'm there 20 hours a week doing my GA position, and be able to kind of reframe that. Next up on some of the new exciting learnings was the authentic leadership theory. So authentic leadership is something that I had heard of before, but I think being able to be in this class was really important. So just kind of having that idea that authentic leadership is kind of that complex process, so it emphasizes the development of leaders and followers becoming more purposeful. It's more value-centered and relational in a positive way. And so when I had kind of been learning about this and talking about this, I applied this to some of my past experiences, especially at the Staley School of Leadership Studies, so at K-State. I really found when I'm able to reflect, and I think I knew even at the time that there were, especially in leadership roles, very authentic leaders. So people who were genuinely concerned for the students' well-being, for the development of that organization, and it's a very big organization at K-State. It's a big deal. And so there was a lot, there's a lot to that. But I found that when I was involved at different levels, that they were very authentic and they were very caring, and they valued people and inclusion and what that looked like. And then kind of in comparison, and not to bash Civic Plus, where I used to work in Manhattan, it's a company, it's in the private sector, it's focused on making money. I get that. And this isn't for every leader there, but I found that a lot of the leaders were inauthentic, and their main goal was not, like they had sometimes said, focused on employee development and caring about those employees. It was more about how could we meet these goals to check them off a list and move on. So I thought, applying that was just interesting, and kind of thinking about those two. I know they're two very different organizations, but there's still an opportunity to look at the authentic leadership there and kind of apply that theory. Next was the leader-member exchange theory. So with this one, I applied to my own experiences with accessibility services in my GA role specifically. And, my supervisor, I've been really lucky. Jennifer she's a very authentic leader, but she is just that leader that focuses on our relationship and understanding that the impacts that she's having on me now are going to make a big impact on me for the future, and kind of what that looks like, and kind of my own professional and how that's going to affect me professionally. And so I've been really blessed and thankful for Jennifer, because we do have that exchange of, it's very positive. It's very, she's focused on me, and she's focused on helping our, very small department, but still important part of the Kelly Center. It's an organization, part of that Kelly Center, succeed in accessibility services. So that's been something I've been able to kind of, even just throughout the first year, reflect on. So the next part is just a little bit about the NASPA leadership competency and the different areas within that, and kind of where I saw myself at this point. So the first one was foundational and theoretical principles of leadership. Talking about understanding and viewing those emerging constructs of, as it says, leader and leadership. So I feel like I'm more advanced on that, and being able to say, okay, I get that. I understand that person, what type of leader are they? And looking at those different and new, as it says, emerging constructs. The next one is self-awareness and continual reflection. I think reflection is hard. I think we all know that, but so I kind of set myself at an intermediate level there. I feel like I'm an authentic leader, but I definitely know that there's improvements that to be an authentic leader in situations that aren't always easy. So, being able to, as it says, develop and incorporate one's authentic self, I think there's still opportunity for growth for me there. And so the next one that I'm going to talk about is teamwork and interpersonal skills. So I think creating that culture of feedback to improve not only yourself, but the team is really important. And I think I've been, Jennifer and I, like I talked about earlier in my current GA role, we have a very open relationship where we'll talk about things, and she'll say, well, you did this, and what did that, what was the purpose of that? Was that something that you think was helpful for the student? Whatever it might be. So I think learning from that, I've been able to see that culture of feedback is important, and it doesn't have to be negative, and it's not always going to be positive, but it doesn't have to always be a negative culture of feedback. And the final one is change management and innovation. And so I think this is something I have an opportunity to grow in. So kind of advocating for that change. I don't think I necessarily have had that leadership role. And maybe if I have, I just haven't done a good enough job of making those changes. And just kind of seeing that plan for change and how I can make that. So I think I need a little growth in that. So I set myself as an intermediate in that area. And then finally, personal growth reflection. So reflecting on what I have learned this year and kind of how I can see it being applied in different areas. And so I want to dig deep here and kind of talk about my new ideas, insights, whatever it might be. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the importance of relationships. So I talked about this a little bit with Jennifer and I, and that leader-member exchange theory and applying that. But I think even beyond that, I'm excited for, my practicums coming up here. And I want to be able to say that those relationships that I have with my supervisors, and even with my coworkers, peers, whatever that might be, that I understand the value in those relationships. Because I think that's the most important part of any organization. I think most people would say that is the people. And so how am I being a part of that organization as a positive member and and a positive member in the way that I'm working well with others and kind of creating those relationships. Next up, I talked about the authentic leadership theory, but I think that's really important and something that I want to continue to work on is being genuine. And as not only, when I'm in a high level of authority, but at a low level, whatever that level is, that I'm a genuine leader and professional, and being able to apply some of those parts of the authentic leadership and understand that it's a complex process, but that being value centered and focus on those relationships is very important. Finally, the ability to view and reframe an organization. So, especially with that four-frame model of leadership, wherever I go in the future, I think being able to apply that is very important, and be able to stop, reflect, and look at this organization and those four frames, whether it's structural frame, human resource frame, political frame, and then some symbolic frame, whatever it is, being able to stop, reflect, and apply those to an organization. And then finally, the future application of course material. So I think it's important that no matter what level of leadership, so I talked about the leadership ladder and kind of, those different ways that in hierarchical leadership, that no matter at what level, that we're able to connect with our peers, and especially with those that are our followers, whatever it might be, and understand the value of that collaboration and that opportunity to collaborate. And then also the adaptive leadership theory. So being a leader who focuses and understands that an organization needs change. And so that might not always be a huge major shift, but it's being able to adapt and mobilize others to adapt as well and create that positive change for an organization, I think is very important and something I want to apply in my future. And then last but not least is leadership ethics. So I think this is something that's been really important for me this semester, and just kind of reflected on who I am as a leader. And when I think of my future and, whatever level I'm at, the choices I make are going to have consequences for myself, of course, but also for students and for other people. So being able in those decision-making situations to step back and understand the moral issues going on, and the way that I'm going to carry myself as an ethical leader is very important. So having those consequences in professional life, I think, is something also that I need to consider. And also, as I make these decisions, small or large, that I understand the consequences and what I'm doing as a leader, someone who considers themselves a value-centered leader, how am I making ethical decisions for change? And so that is all that I have today. Thank you to Jenny for a great semester and a great course, and thank you to everyone else, and have a nice night.